Okay, here's our water pump. This one's actually belt driven. Here you can see the impeller. It's got an O-ring right here that seals at the block. This piece right here is our weep hole. So if you see water dripping out of here, that means it's time to replace the water pump. Okay, we're going to go ahead and install this. Water pump goes in. Let's see, remember how this goes. Yep, so the weep hole comes out the side, so it would leak over here if it was leaking. Just 3 bolts. Like I said, that O-ring seals it to the block, so we don't have to worry about that. And we're down here. Somebody lost the right bolts for this, it looks like, so. Or they broke them, I don't know which, but torque to 18 foot-pounds. Torque here. Not real tight. That's probably what somebody did, is over torque these. That's probably why it's missing. Okay. Here's our belt tensioner. Some of these pulleys can be replaced. This one's a sealed unit, but this has spring tension in it too. And this little tang here goes in that hole. Basically, you just put it on, bolt it on, and that's that. Then you can put a 1/2-inch drive ratchet here to tension your belt when you take it on and off. Okay, here's our fan drive. There's a bearing in there. It's got 4 bolts in it. Basically bolts here. Rather than driving the water pump like your automotive applications, they actually put an actual fan drive on most industrial equipment. Some of this is probably rebuildable if you could find the parts for it. Most of the time it's a throwaway unit. Here's our alternator mount. We call this a J mount. I'll show you on the alternator when I get it. Ready to put it on. Pretty straightforward. This just bolts on here. Thermostat would go right here. We'll do that in a minute too. 32 as well. That's pretty close. I know my impact pretty well, so I don't have to torque it all the time. And here's my alternator. Right here there's a sliding collar that it takes up the slop in it. This is what they call a J mount. Getting that. We may have to. Oh, there it went. Sometimes you have to go back and push that little sliding collar back so you can get it started. When I tighten this nut up right here, that'll push this collar in to cinch that up. Okay, right down here, this is the mounting strap. This one's non-adjustable. A lot of these would have a slotted strap if it didn't have an automatic tensioner on it. This essentially goes here. Essentially you tighten everything down and the alternator's done until we get the rest of the pulleys on. And we'll tighten this one down. Tighten our sliding mount. And here's our fan pulley. A couple pieces here. So there's the first serpentine part, and there's another belt here. You got to make sure you line all the holes up. You got this plate that goes on over the top of it. Now, to torque this, the best way would be to put a strap wrench or something on here to hold it. Another place where you need to know your impact gun. Okay, now figuring out our belt routing. We're going to see what we got here, so that can go, I think, like this. Oh, no, don't want it in there. That seems about the right length. Take our belt tensioner here. Get that on there. You want to make sure all the grooves in the belt are lined up correctly. When this belt's off, you can see one end just chewed up a little bit because the something's off as far as routing goes. Just essentially let go of it, and there's your belt installed. Normally a fan would be bolted to this. Okay, here's our thermostat. This is a goofy looking one. This one's pretty rusty, all the water that's been run through it. But there's a seal there. There's a seal there. That's actually what seals it to the block. So it sets in like so. And then here's our Waterneck. It's going to sit on top of that. Bolt our bolts in. This would go to the upper radiator hose when we get to putting the radiator on. Just torque to 18. Okay, we're going to stamp out a gasket out of some gasket paper. The easiest place to start is if you can find the hole. A little tighter. Use a bolt to help us hold it. Come over here and find the hole on this side. And you can also use some leather punches and things like that to help do this. Small ball-peen hammer works really well. Kind of neat how that just cuts that. Alright, now we gotta find our center hole. You can buy this gasket material in a lot of different sizes. I just used what I got here, so. And there's our gasket. Okay, here's our, this is our lower water inlet. Water comes in here, goes into the water pump, and the oil cooler's there right next to it. I'm going to put my gasket I just made. Okay, this one's small enough I don't have to glue it on. A lot of times I will, just to make it easier to install. No, I'll have to get a swivel on that one. Now as I torque to 18, like I said, and this is our suction from our water pump. Okay, here's our oil cooler. This is a plate type. Oil goes in here, comes out one or the other. You can see they're plates. If you get a metal failure, you want to replace that. This is kind of a metalish gasket that goes on top of here. And then here's our oil filter housing. Inside here you can see here's our oil pressure relief and regulator valve. I don't know which is which, I'd have to look it up. Okay, here's our oil cooler. Sets right in here. There's a gasket on one side, well, on both sides actually. This cover is going to go on it. Kind of a trick to hold it all together, but and we torque our bolts down, and that's installed. Okay, we're going to torque all our bolts. Notice there's some studs here, and just regular bolts. I don't know if they're in the right spot. I mean, I'm moving them later, but looks like they marked it, that there was a stud there. I put a mark on the stud and the housing, so that helps. This would be a pressure test port. We could hook up a mechanical gauge there. This is going to go to the turbo feed. There's a ground strap for the alternator here. It seems to lay out there, so we're going to go with that. Tighten that and the alternator up. And this fitting right here is for a block heater that you would plug in the wintertime to keep the coolant warm. And here's our oil filter. Put a film of oil on here, and then you're going to put it on. We would pre-fill these, but I'm not going to start this, so I'm not going to mess with it. Just going to run it down until it stops, and then you give it a 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn. It tells you right on the can.